Breaking tonight, history for all the wrong reasons. The presumptive Democratic nominee for president grilled by the FBI. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight. And now my opening statement. For the first time in the history of this great nation, the person about to become the Democratic nominee for President of the United States was interrogated by the FBI today as part of an ongoing year-long federal criminal investigation. This within days of the target's husband, Bill Clinton, meeting privately on board a parked private jet with the Attorney General of the United States, who has his wife's future in her hands, deciding whether that wife should be indicted for engaging in criminal activity. That Loretta Lynch, the chief law enforcement officer of this country, the head of the United States Department of Justice, that citadel of integrity and impartiality, would violate her own Justice Department rules on ethical conduct, specifically Rule 14, would not only talk for 30 minutes in a private, unmemorialized meeting, but for a local reporter, and then not recuse herself from the criminal investigation, brings shame on all the great United States attorneys who work tirelessly, ethically, doing their jobs without fear or favor. You know, every small-town prosecutor in this country would not only refuse to speak with the spouse of a target, but would refuse to even be in their company to avoid the appearance of impropriety. And then Loretta Lynch tries to sell us a bill of goods and then tries to back out of her unethical conduct by saying this.
The recommendations will be reviewed by career supervisors in the Department of Justice and in the FBI, and by the FBI director. And then, as is the common process, they present it to me, and I fully expect to accept their recommendations.
Did you notice she said she expects to accept? Does accepting their recommendations mean she doesn't have the right to overrule it? No. She didn't say, I will recuse myself. She didn't say, I'll stay out of it. She didn't say, I'll ask for a special prosecutor, or I'll ask for an independent counsel. This is all smoke and mirrors, folks. So what's going on in this country? We have a president who lies about everything, from a peaceful protest that got out of hand in Benghazi to you can keep your health care and your doctor. A Secretary of State who lies about everything, from that despicable video causing the deaths of an ambassador and 3 Americans to having her own server for convenience. Folks, these are people for whom there are no consequences, and yet they keep going higher and higher in our government. These are people openly flaunting the system while we ordinary Americans are held to a completely different standard. Now, I've spent over 3 decades in the criminal justice system as a prosecutor, an elected judge, and an elected district attorney. I have investigated, arrested, indicted, prosecuted, and sentenced criminals for murders, rapes, and violent felonies, and every one of them is entitled to the presumption of innocence. But is everyone entitled to the presumption of truthfulness? Are these people entitled to a presumption of truthfulness? The answer is absolutely not. There is no way Bill Clinton is entitled to a presumption of truthfulness. His talking to the Attorney General when he himself might be a target, or at least a witness, in the worldwide money laundering operation called the Clinton Foundation, parading as a not-for-profit charity, would be bad enough if we had reason to believe they were saying the truth. But with Bill Clinton, there can be no presumption of truthfulness. There is serial evidence to the contrary. Bill Clinton was impeached for perjury and obstruction of justice. He escaped indictment by accepting a penalty short of criminal conviction, including an unequivocal admission of lying under oath by surrendering his law license. As a result, he was disbarred. Hillary Clinton has been investigated for everything from the Rose Law Firm to Whitewater to cattle futures to missing files, Travelgate, etc. So what should Americans reasonably believe? Nothing that they say. The Clintons repeatedly violate our standard of truthfulness and honesty. So should these people be trusted to run our country? Should Hillary Clinton be trusted to run for president of the United States? Should the Clintons be trusted to go back into the White House? The answer is positively, absolutely, undeniably, unquestionably no. And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook page or Twitter. Hashtag Judge Janine. Joining me now to talk about today's developments in Washington, the president of Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton. Tom, thanks for being with me tonight. What's your take on what happened today?
Well, it's an extraordinary development. The FBI doesn't call you in for 3.5 hours to dot the I's and cross the T's, especially someone like Mrs. Clinton, who is such a public figure. I think a meeting like this, if it was typical, would be at the end of an investigation, and they're bringing the target of the investigation in and asking her essentially to tell them why she shouldn't be indicted. A 3.5-hour meeting is a lengthy meeting. I've sat in plenty of depositions where 3+ hours of questions is more than enough to get the information out, and it can provide an exhaustive vehicle for getting what is supposed to be the truth. And I tell you, the fact that this FBI here questioning and answer session took place today makes that meeting that Bill Hill and Ms. Lynch had even worse. Had that meeting been scheduled prior to today? Did they know about the meeting when they met on Monday of last week? Had it been scheduled already? And if it had been scheduled already, it's even worse.
Tom, you know what? I agree with you. And obviously you heard my open, you know how I think. Here's the thing. If she is the last person to be interviewed, and they know this is going to be wrapped up before the convention, one way or the other, then there's no question that they knew that she's the last witness. As in all criminal investigations, the last person the FBI speaks to is the person who is the center of the investigation or the target. So, I mean, Bill Clinton the man is a perjurer. He perjures under oath. I mean, the man was impeached for perjury. And it's not just for one thing. It's repeatedly in depositions. It's in grand juries. I mean, this is someone who is not honest. Someone who was the attorney general who knew that it was unethical. And shame on Loretta Lynch for not throwing him off that plane. And it just tells me the whole lot of them are a bunch of sleazy, slimy politicians.
Well, she blew up the investigation. This is her most important decision that she had to make as Attorney General, the decision whether to prosecute Mrs. Clinton and, frankly, Bill Clinton and maybe others. And now that, as she's admitted, the whole thing has had a shadow cast over it. And I don't know how she fixes it. I don't know how it's fixed. The special counsel may be too late. Maybe the only fix is an indictment to reestablish trust from the American people in the system. But Ms. Lynch has a lot to answer for. That's why we, in the least, have asked for an Inspector General investigation.
Who is she going to answer to? Who is she going to? This woman should not only recuse herself, she should resign. Because what she has done to the American public's faith in the criminal justice system, she's totally destroyed it.
Well, you know, if Republicans in Congress feel that way, they can make that happen. And there's not a member of the administration who serves in office without the sufferance of Republicans in Congress. And if they didn't want that person in office in the cabinet, they'd make it clear things won't happen anymore until that person resigns. So if they feel strongly about it, they should take action.
What about, you know, the idea that she is still going to be there, you know, short term, and she controls whether or not that case goes in the grand jury?
Well, it's a terrible situation, as we said before, and I think she needs to make it clear that the decision is going to be made by non-political prosecutors, because we've heard that line before out of this Justice Department. Either that or recuse herself and just say, "Look, I'm not going to appoint a special counsel. I'm going to let someone else in the agency."
She was on the hot seat yesterday, and she namby-pambied through the whole thing and said, "I'm going to leave it up to career prosecutors, the FBI, the head of the FBI." And then she says, "I fully expect to accept their recommendations." That doesn't mean she's going to. That doesn't mean she recused herself. She can block the grand jury access.
Yeah, and to be clear, I would use the phrase careerist prosecutors in the Justice Department, because in D.C. especially, you have a lot of bureaucrats who are as political as the political appointees they report to. So we really have to put pressure on the system, the President, Congress, and the Justice Department indirectly, to do the right thing here and put the rule of law before politics.
You know the president's not going to do it, Tom. He's the one who said she never put the security of this country in jeopardy, and he's doubled down by endorsing her. But, Tom, we always love having you on the show. Thanks so much for being with us. Tom Fitton.
You're welcome, Jay.
All right, with me now, American Center for Law and Justice Chief Counsel Jay Sekulow. All right, Jay, thanks for being with us tonight. What do you make of this latest 3.5-hour voluntary interview with the FBI?
Yeah, voluntary interview, because if she didn't volunteer, they were going to subpoena her. Look, it's exactly what you said, Judge. This is the last person you interview. I've been involved in prosecutions. You have too. The last person you interview is who? The target. It's exactly what you said. That's what's the situation here. She's the target. So she's the last one interviewed. But the outrage of this to the American people should be the rule of law has been completely sabotaged here. And what about those FBI agents who have been working on this case for a year to find out that days before the target of the investigation is interviewed by the FBI, the Department of Justice, her husband gets on the airplane owned by the United States Department of Justice and has a private conversation with the chief law enforcement officer of the United States of America, the Attorney General. So I'm with you. We're past recusal. She needs to resign. She needs to go.
Let me ask you this, Tom. So Hillary Clinton goes in. I hear there are 8, I believe, from the FBI or the Justice Department, certainly the FBI. She's got 5 lawyers, what happens? Do they ask her questions? She said it was civil. I mean, really, what did she think? She was going to be waterboarded? I mean, come on. And then the other thing is, do they then present evidence that she may not know they had? What do you think happened in there?
Well, look, I think one of the things you've got to be crystal clear about is they gave immunity to the IT person who put this together. That person got immunity. You don't get immunity unless you've made a proffer. The proffer means that you've established that there's something worthy that the United States Department of Justice wants, so much so that they were willing to say, we will not prosecute you for a crime so long as you're corroborating what you're saying is going to be the following. So they give them that proffer of testimony. I think you take that proffer and you present that evidence before who? Before the target, and ask for an explanation, or ask, what she knew or didn't know and when she knew it. But the problem with this is the entire process is now completely 100% tainted, irrecoverable, can't recover. And she doubled down on this, Judge. Loretta Lynch said she had the Department of Justice issued a corrective, pretty much a corrective, saying, to be clear, the Attorney General is the ultimate person that's going to make the decision here. So she's not recused herself. She hasn't removed herself. She, like you said, she hedged on I will rely on career prosecutors. But that evidence was put forward. There's no doubt about it when they're questioning the Secretary of State. I do ask this question, though, and you and I have both done these kind of cases. 3.5 hours for the target sounds like a long time, but for a year-long investigation, not that long. So, it could have been very targeted what they were looking for here.
Some people are saying, it was a long time. It's not a long time. First of all,
it's not.
Did they confront her with the 50 or the 30,000 emails that she erased and that she destroyed? Did they get them back? Did they forensically get them back and then confront her with them, saying this has nothing to do with yoga, this has nothing to do with your wedding dress, this has to do with the money for the Clinton Foundation?
Well, look, all of that is a possible, in the sense that the FBI was able to obtain information. They did a thorough investigation here. I don't doubt for a moment that James Comey's agents are doing a thorough job. But let's go back to the 3.5 hours. You and I are both correct on this. That's not a long time.
I agree.
But if they were very targeted, Judge, if they knew exactly what they wanted to hear, in other words, they knew what they needed for their case, maybe they got it. I still say at the end of the day, because those emails went from Hillary Clinton on the private email server to the President of the United States, an indictment, not likely, but this situation with the Attorney General casts such a shadow on it that if the FBI makes that recommendation in its criminal reference letter to the Department of Justice and they don't prosecute, I cannot even imagine what the fallout's going to be.
Well, you know what? Within 3 weeks of the Democratic convention, you know, this is nail-biting time. But you know how she is. Yep. Nothing moves her. She goes out there and, you know, waves, and we'll see what happens. Jay Sekulow, thanks so much for being with us this evening.
Thanks, Judge.
All right.
Appreciate it.
And my political panel is standing by with a very interesting take on today's news and Hillary's future. Plus, talking on MSNBC today. More now on tonight's breaking news. Clinton expected soon to be the official nominee of the Democratic Party, grilled today in a criminal investigation by the FBI. And what a panel we have tonight. In Washington, Republican strategist and Fox News contributor Brad Blakeman, as well as former advisor to Hillary Clinton's 2008 campaign, Democratic strategist Richard Goodstein. And here in New York with me, independent and conservative radio talk show host, Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce. Thanks all for being with me. All right, I'm going to start with the Democrat. She says it was, Richard, you ready? She said it was a chance meeting. And I hosted a show last night, and the local reporter said that she, as a matter of fact, landed on time, that her arrival, he and his entourage waited 30 minutes before they actually were able to get onto her plane. So it sounds like it wasn't a chance meeting, Richard. How do you explain that?
Judge, you'll pardon me if I'm humored by the coverage I'm hearing on this show of this matter. And here's why. If it was my candidate who was being accused by party leaders of mine of being a racist and a bigot and a xenophobe and a con man, I'd want to change the subject too, let alone somebody who wants to tank the economy, Mitt Romney,
Richard,
Paul Singer. I'm just saying.
Richard. There has never in the history of this country been a person about to be nominated a presidential candidate under a year-long FBI federal criminal investigation. And it's not funny. Go ahead, Brad.
Well, no, you know what? You know what it is? You know what's not funny?
You gave up your time. Go ahead, Brad.
That's fine.
Look, this was not a chance meeting. President Clinton took the initiative by going onto her plane when he knew. Look, he's a lawyer, a disbarred lawyer, but a lawyer nonetheless. He knew better. And in spite of knowing better, he went on her plane, had a 30-minute conversation. And, Judge, this reminds me of the scene in Godfather 2. Remember when the key witness against the Godfather is sitting before a Senate hearing, and he's about to expose the entire Corleone family, and he looks back in the gallery and he sees his brother. All he has to do is see his brother, and he recants his testimony. That's what happened here. All Clinton had to do was show up before the Attorney General, and the message was made.
All right.
It was
you know
wrong.
what? He muddied the whole thing up. Tammy Bruce.
Yeah.
What's your take?
Well, look, I think that Bill Clinton, everything he does there's a reason. Nothing is by chance. This is a team. He doesn't do anything without letting her know. This is about the presidential race. I think they feel that this is really the last chance they had. It tells me, and I believe you'll disagree with me, but I think they believe they'll be indicted. And this was an effort that no matter what happens now, this conversation is being had, and the messaging is that no matter whether she's indicted or not, that everyone has a question about whether or not it's a legitimate dynamic or whether it's been done politically. That may have been the reason for his visit. Maybe they didn't talk about anything at all, but I'm also curious about the woman not really being discussed in general about the impact on Loretta Lynch. She may have been ambushed to some degree, maybe did not. He pointed her to her original federal judgeship. She may not have known how to stop him. And that, of course, does not speak well of him.
Are you kidding? She's a tough woman like you and me. I would say to him, get off my plane. I'm investigating your wife.
But for Bill Clinton, he had to know what this would do to her career and to her reputation and to the Attorney General's office in general. That's how desperate I think they are. For Hillary Clinton, look, they've gotten away with a lot of things in their past. They're consummate politicians, and Americans can learn through this about what certain people are willing to do, and we have to decide if we believe we deserve better.
All right, Richard, I'm going back to you now.
Thank you.
The fact is that she spent 3.5 hours with the FBI discussing the server. She has come out and she gave a very interesting statement. Basically, you know, there wasn't all that, you know, everything's great. There's zero chance I'll be indicted. You know, everything is good. It was like, and I'm not going to say anything else. Sounds like she's a little more concerned. How did you take her statement today?
I think it would have been altogether unwise, and frankly, you would have been down her throat if she had said anything. Look, because you would have said she's trying to kind of, you know, play the referees a little bit. The fact of the matter is, if you look at any of the statutes that are even arguably pertinent here, she doesn't come close. Classified information, this was all classified way after the fact. She's smart, but she's not clairvoyant. She couldn't look into the future and know what emails she was getting that were going to be later classified.
All right, she's not clairvoyant, but Richard, answer this question. The woman is the head of the State Department. What the hell is she doing for 4 years if she doesn't have any classified or top secret information on her emails? Was she playing dominoes with her friends?
Yeah. So as you know, Colin Powell had it, and his successors.
No, he did not. Don't muddy the waters. He did not have a server. He had a private email.
Judge,
totally different.
There's a separate system for classified, and just like, you know, she had a private server. Colin Powell did too. It was just called AOL. It wasn't in his basement, but he used a private server as well.
He had a private email. You know what, Brad? You take it.
That was handled on a private system.
And he used the government system. She stole our prop. You know what? I'm staying out of it. Brad, you go.
Look, I was in the White House. We were given explicit instructions that if we used, even incidentally, our email of our personal account for official business, it would expose all our emails and we would be fired. Secretary Clinton made a conscious decision to exclusively, and this is the difference, Richard, exclusively use private email for all her official business. Richard, it doesn't matter what documents are stamped. It matters the content. She knew what the content was or should have known, and that is the standard.
All right, go ahead, Tamara.
Add a little something here about beyond Hillary, about Bill Clinton himself. It's not just about her. He also is a target and a witness, because this investigation also encompasses the Clinton Foundation, the money that, her influence, but money that was taken in that affected him as well. So she not only met with the spouse of someone who was a target, but a man who himself would be, and a man who would be a witness in both instances. That's what's so shocking about the process, and why I think that you will see an indictment, and I think this is the one way that they can say, look, everything that's happening to us now is political, and hope that it moves them past through the election itself.
That's very interesting. All right. And that's not all. More with the panel is straight ahead, so stay with us. Nobody move. You in agreement that they should hand over these dangerous criminals to the feds?
That's a toughie.
No, it isn't. I've been doling it out for a year now, and tonight we're going to look back at some of my favorite moments. Back to justice. More now with my political panel. You know, there are a whole host of criminal charges that Hillary Clinton may face if she were to be indicted. And you can see them there along the screen. But I want to go to Richard Goodstein now again. And Richard, I'm going to ask you this. You know, everyone says that she didn't do this intentionally. Is that the end of the story?
Well, there's a gross negligence standard in one of the statutes that arguably applies. But here's where that was used, where an Air Force sergeant threw documents in a dumpster, where a Marine took documents out and hid it in his gym bag and then his garage. That's the gross negligence. Yes, so no, there's an intentionality, of course, with most criminal statutes, but the fact of the matter is, again, classified is really at the core here, and you can say everything you want. Again, there was a separate classified system, and in this case,
Okay.
Everything that was classified after the fact.
Let me ask you this, and actually I'm not going to ask you, I'm going to go to Brad.
Okay.
You know, her intent was clear as far as I'm concerned based on one email where she directs her staffer, Jake Sullivan. She says, and I think we may have a screen on this, if they can't turn it, if they can't send it, turn it into non-paper with no identifiable heading and send non-secure. What does that tell you, Brad, about her intent vis-a-vis classified information?
That tells me that she's telling a staff person to subvert the rules and laws of the United States with regard to the custodianship and custody and control of classified material and send it to her as a non-classified document. That is clear to me as a lawyer that it shows her intent. And it also shows to me the control she had over her staff. The staff, I'm sure, is also very culpable in the crimes that the FBI is looking at, and that's why you saw Brian Pagliano
that's why he's got immunity. Okay, Tammy, go ahead.
That statute there, when it came to the Espionage Act and the issue of intent and gross negligence, you don't need to intend to. That's the key. And yet you've already shown that there is intent, but that particular dynamic about gross negligence doesn't even require intent. So this is where it had to have been uncomfortable today for the former Secretary of State. But I think that that's why in any other regular circumstance, this person would be indicted. And now if she is, the courtesy could be in not suggesting felonies, but misdemeanors.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting, Richard, I'll go back to you. I mean, you can reference someone throwing away classified documents as gross negligence. That's intentional. You and I both know that was a plea bargain. You know, like Bill Clinton got a plea bargain instead of being indicted. But you're right. Tammy's right. It's about gross negligence, which doesn't require intent. But she did intend to remove these items under unauthorized removal and retention of classified documents. Now, let's talk about the fact, Richard, that she called it a security inquiry. And on June 14th, I believe Jim Comey, the head of the FBI, said, security inquiry? We don't do security inquiries. The FBI does criminal investigations. I think we have a full screen on that, guys. I guess not. Yeah, so what do you have to say about that, Richard?
Well, you're going to tell your viewers, aren't you, that that document that she asked to have handled a different way was not handled that way. So, you know, say what you will about intent, there was actually no follow-through. That's a pretty big factor that I think your viewers should know.
No, it isn't. You're wrong. No, I'm a criminal lawyer, Richard. Let me tell you something. Don't tell me that because the person may not have done it, that she didn't intend for them to do it. The intent is formed simultaneous with the act of her directing them. But I want to go past that, where the woman, you know, they talk Clinton speak. She says, no, it's a security inquiry, and the head of the FBI says it's criminal investigation. I'm going to go to Brad now because, Richard, you gave up your time.
That's fine.
There is no such thing as a security inquiry. The FBI is the federal police. They do police work. And guess what? It's criminal. And for her to say anything else is not only being disingenuous, but she's lying about exactly the kind of information that the FBI is looking at her about and her office when she was Secretary of State. And, Judge, you know this better than anybody. It's been said that a prosecutor can indict a ham sandwich. The FBI is feeding at the all-you-can-eat buffet. There's plenty here.
Tammy, I'll give you the last word.
Well, look, I think that this is in her own statement. You saw this, and her attitude, even with Chuck Todd, is that there is either complete and total denial, or it is a fantasy land, like the corkscrew landing into Kosovo. This is a woman who, no matter what you think of the investigation, is this a person with a relationship with reality who should be in the White House? And these are the kinds of questions that the American voter is going to be asking themselves. Her behavior in this process, perpetual scandal and exhaustion of the scandals.
Well, no doubt about it. Richard, Brad Blakeman, Richard Goodstein, and Tammy Bruce, thanks for being with me tonight.
Thank you, Judge. All
right, and Hillary's bad week began several days ago with the release of the Benghazi report. We're going to talk about that with my friend Colonel David Hunt next. Washington and much of America talking about Hillary Clinton and whether she is fit to lead the U.S. military. With me now, Fox News military analyst, retired Colonel David Hunt. All right, Colonel, you and I were on this thing, I believe, since September 16th of 2012, within 5 days of the attack on Benghazi. And you and I pretty much called most of it. I have to take some credit for that.
Yeah, you did.
And we knew it wasn't a video from the get-go. We knew no one was sent. And, you know, I was looking back, and when Panetta says, and I don't know if we have the sound on this, Panetta says we couldn't have gotten there in time. Why did he say that when we now find out that Panetta, before 7:30, had actually given the okay for forces to go in there?
He didn't just give okay, give an order within the first hour of the attack. And I think the reason, not inside Panetta's head, but clearly political reasons why someone would say something that's not true and is going to come out later. Panetta, that's what we learned in this report, that Panetta gave an order. The president okayed that order within 2 hours, but the Department of Defense did not react. No planes went over, no transport, no forces.
You've got the big dogs, okay? You've got the head of the Department of Defense and the President of the United States. Who has the gall to not implement that order?
That is the question that Gowdy couldn't answer.
Why couldn't Gowdy answer?
He said he was stonewalled by the White House, by the State Department, and by the Department of Defense, because it is knowable. We know exactly who was on duty, who was in command.
Is it Carter Ham? Is it Carter
Ham would be part of that. No, this would have to start within the Department of Defense itself and the Pentagon. They did not react. I mean, the Secretary of Defense says, go get him. But you and I remember, nobody was saying we could have saved Stevens. We should have tried, because it happened so fast. But that fight lasts 13, 14 hours. And it turns out, to Panetta's credit, he gives the order. And the President of the United States doesn't change the order. But nothing moved, and Gowdy, with 800 pages, could not get that answer. And it's a shame, because he wrote a good report. He just got these big questions that he could not get answered.
Let me ask you this. You know, you and I, or at least I remember that I was very critical of Panetta when he said we couldn't get there in time. I mean, whether it's 13 hours or 8 hours or 6 hours.
We should have tried.
We should have tried. But, you know, Panetta, and you know, to his credit, he never said, I gave the order.
True.
He never, you know, he just, you know, like fools saying we couldn't get there in time. We had FAST and we had SIF and we had all of that other stuff going on, and guys at Special Ops in Croatia, planes in Sigonella. I remember all this stuff.
You do.
So, but Panetta, to his credit, never said, I gave the order.
Right, but he did in testimony, and to his credit, he did not cloud it up with, well, I gave the order. The problem we have is, what we all should want to know is, why wasn't that order obeyed? Why wasn't it pushed? It's inconceivable, after then 13 years of war, not being able to do something. And again, when the Secretary of Defense and the President saying do it, we didn't. It's a lot of questions. But the report that Gowdy writes, the 800 report, is really factual, timeline, and it's not the political hit job everyone accused him of.
Should that select committee have done the investigation?
Yeah, it's absolutely. It's just they should never have been able to. The Department of Defense, the White House, and the State Department should not have been able to stonewall like they did.
Again, but they did.
Again, Gowdy writes a good report. Democrats, unfortunately, write a report 300 pages and mention Trump 12 times.
That's 23, I hear, from Westmoreland.
The point is, it's never had nothing to do with Benghazi. He wasn't even in the picture. So that's unfortunate. But the other report is well done. But this issue,
you know what? Does Pat Smith, does Charles Woods, do any of them have an answer? No. As to who lied, why they lied, why it was, you know, there was this perpetuation of the lie.
We know it started at the White House, and we know they did it for 2 weeks. But for you and I, when we did that for almost 8 shows, we stayed to the facts about the rescue, and we turned out to be correct. The problem, though, is this 6 hours is no excuse why they didn't go.
None at all. Colonel David Hunt, thanks so much for being with us. And next, I'll look back outside to talk to Americans about politics. I've had a lot of fun, and I've learned a lot. Here tonight are some of my favorites. You don't know who that person is?
What's her name?
Who is it? Hillary Clinton?
She's likable.
She's likable? What has she done for you?
Nothing.
You want her to be the president?
Why not? Sure. I'm sorry. I'm not really a cameraman.
Why? You got a warrant outstanding somewhere? So Ted Cruz. I probably did arrest him.
Chris Garcia. I like him too. He's a little.
Yeah.
I just like him because he's kind of bossy and big, and you know, he's like that.
He's in your face.
He's a good mobster.
Kind of like you. Vote for her?
No.
That's me. Did you know that? What about the fact that the president is saying that mentally ill people shouldn't get a gun?
I 100% agree. This world is a crazy world we live in.
Okay, so get a gun.
I got a hammer. I don't need a gun. I got a hammer right here. 21 ounces.
Do you know of any country that's been a socialist country?
No.
No?
I wasn't great in history class.
Well, it's happening now. Have you ever heard that socialism is a political and an economic organization where, you know, the government pretty much owns all the methods of production and then redistributes the wealth?
Say that again?
Have a very big truck. Is America ready for a woman president?
Yes, we are. We're definitely ready.
Okay, and who should that be?
Miss Hillary Clinton.
Don't take off until I get off this 18-wheel. How many wheels do you have on this truck? Come on, Teddy. Teddy Roosevelt. Is America ready for a woman president? And why isn't the White House ready for a woman?
I guess because I'm a male chauvinist.
You know what? There's a lot of tough women out there.
Sure are.
All right.
And you're one of them.
She's staring at you. Why are you staring? Why are you staring at Scott Baio?
Damn it, Mr. Judge. You see her go after people, how amazing she is? She's the best. Change shirts? I'll put that shirt on right now. Let's go.
Do you know this is Hillary Clinton's headquarters?
I've heard that.
Are you scared when you come in and her people are here?
Yes, I am.
Well, what are you scared of?
You know, they're just so confident, and I'm scared that she might win.
The reason I'm here is because Trump stands for what I came here for 35 years ago, and I feel everything's going down the tubes.
What do you think about the wall?
Well, I think I have a lock on my front door, and I have a fence around my house. So I believe that, yeah, having a wall for security is a good idea.
He's concerned about the Second Amendment, but he doesn't have a gun.
Well, we technically can't bring guns in here.
I don't mean you have a gun here, but do you own a gun?
Absolutely.
Why did that not surprise me? Why do you have a gun?
Because it's all right. And they're fun.
What do you do?
I'm a hairdresser.
A sanctuary city is where the locals decide that illegal immigrants are not going to be turned over to the feds, even if the feds say we want them. Is that right or wrong?
Let me think about this for a couple seconds.
Are you in agreement that they should hand over these dangerous criminals to the feds?
That's a toughie.
No, it isn't.
I feel I'd have to know more about this.
What do you need to know? The woman's dead. He was illegal. He shouldn't have been here, and they protected him.
It's awful that people die.
Do you have a weapon?
I do not, but I trained in martial arts for many years, so...
But, you know, you may have a black belt, but at the end of the day, if he's got a gun and you got a black belt, who wins?
The gun wins, and that's why I'm for people having legal gun
and
rights.
Therein lies the rub.
Hey, you know karate, I know crazy.
Yeah. You pointing at me when you said that?
No, absolutely not.
And I love your speeches.
And my big mouth.
Of course.
Mourn the passing of Nobel laureate and Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel. I met Elie many times. He was a great influence on my career as a prosecutor, fighting to give voice to the victims of crime. I spent much of my career, in fact, following his mantra, to do nothing helps the abuser, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Elie, rest in peace. Although your work is done here, your light continues to shine on us all. Thank you, and thanks for joining us. Good night.